Awesome. Hello, everybody. That was a cool intro, right? Everybody, welcome to Archetype. This is our fourth episode. Could be wrong. But fourth episode of Archetype, sponsored by Lenovo. So nice to see you guys here. And we are going to be continuing our character. So again, I took some time outside of our stream just because the stream's only 2 hours to kind of finalize and finish up some stuff that I liked about our character. So we're going to now get into the fun part, which is posing in ZBrush. Now, normally, of course, for characters for games or film, no Ashley intro. Oh yeah, there's no intro of me this time. Just awesome Gnomon things, but it's good enough. So we're gonna be getting into posing here, but again, like in film or in game, what we would normally do is we'd have our low res, which this is fairly all low. Again, I split up this character into multiple different parts, and reason being I did that is because I am going to be posing in ZBrush. And so being able to select these parts and stuff as we pose will be way easier when it's split up this way. But in reality of like films and games, this would become one mesh and you would have a nice low res with all your stuff. So everything's nice and low. So that way when I bring it into Transpose Master, everything should move nice and cleanly. But there's going to be quite a bit of fixing up to do, at the end of the posing and whatnot. But I'm going to try to do my best to not make it too much work for myself. So we'll see how it goes. Hello, Scott. Nice to see you too. I remember you. And welcome to the stream. So yeah, we're going to get into it. Just to note, so I do have some stuff that's like fairly detailed. Like I went in and cleaned up and kind of, added some little sculpts and things to the pants and to the hood and things like that. We added some scrapes and things to his little chemistry set thing that he's got going on. Added a nice little cool little pouch pocket holster stuff with his little chemical things and whatnot. But a lot of it's also still not textured or not finalized, and reason being is because again a lot of it changes as I go through the pose. So I'm going to treat this more as if I'm working on like a maquette, because if I was going to 3D print this type thing or something like that, because we are going to be posing it in ZBrush, so a lot of the details and stuff may come after the fact just because we are kind of focusing on posing it and getting like a finalized render out of it. So we're going to do that. And also note, my idea for posing, as you might see down here, is I sculpted this little blobby explosion. So the idea that I want to have for this is maybe he is going to be jumping over it. So we can have their character jumping over this and maybe this little thing in the background or something like that. If I have time, I was thinking it'd be kind of cool to have him going through smoke, but smoke and liquids and things like that can be kind of a big pain in the butt to sculpt. So we'll see how I feel about, can you guys hear me now? Oh no. Am I good? Am I back? Oh no. Yeah, I'm good. Okay. Sorry. I don't know why internet's being so spotty. That's super weird. But hopefully I won't cut out too much. So for posing, I'm just going to make sure that everything that I don't want to pose with this guy is hidden, which would be that little explosion, little star, and things like that. Super weird. Hopefully I'm not too spotty. All right. Let's get into posing this dude. We're going to do Transpose Master, and we'll do T-Pose Mesh. So for ZBrush, T-Pose Mesh, basically what it does is take your whole model and it combines it into one low-res mesh, or at least the lowest subdivision of each subtool that you do have. Puts it into a separate scene, and then I can pose all of that together, such as like this. And then when I'm done and finished and happy with it, I can hit this little button and bring it back, and it'll go directly back into my stuff with all my poly paint, all my details and things like that. So what I usually start off by doing is grouping things that I know will probably stay together, because there's a ton of polygroups in here that might not be very helpful for me to select. So I'm going to get in here and start selecting some of this stuff. Like his whole head, probably I want it to be grouped together. Right, because I'm probably not going to move too much. If I change the expression and stuff, that might happen later anyway. It might be easier to adjust later. These are going to be more of like big ultimate changes that we'll be going into. Someone's asking, is it always better to sculpt them in a simple pose than do a dynamic one after? Yes, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I'll do this too, is, you know, it kind of depends on what you're doing your sculpt for. If you are doing something really organic, like maybe a creature sculpt or something like that, and you're doing it for a maquette, or maybe as you're doing it for like an anatomy study, then you might actually want to just sculpt it in pose, and it helps you practice your anatomy and things like that. Because again, ZBrush does have a lot of things that make life easier for us, such as, you know, being able to sculpt in symmetry and things like that. So for us, it's a lot easier to, you know, finalize creature sculpts and things like that. So usually my process is to sculpt in symmetry first, because it's just a lot easier. But if you're practicing anatomy or you're practicing something like that, you want to get something really, really dynamic, then yeah, it's definitely something that is always good to practice. I still like to practice in sculpting in asymmetry at times if you're doing anatomy studies and things like that, just because it is always good to kind of keep it fresh and keep it clean and keep your art eye strong, you know. It's really easy to kind of fall on the wayside with things like that. So I'm just grouping things that I think I'll be able to move together. Some of this is going to be very tricky around the midsection because there's so much stuff going on. But I'm going to do my best to sculpt things. What I usually like to do is I'll try to group stuff that I know I want to move together. So get rid of that. So this I want to move kind of like as a set, you know, and then anything that's kind of squishy, such as like a holster or belt or something like that, I can kind of sculpt or move that and mask that as I go along. So this is the part that's going to be like slightly tedious, but I'm just grouping things that kind of make sense to be able to select and move together while keeping other parts separate. So like this armband with these things, I probably want to keep that together. I don't want it to go with this guy though. Oh, I have two. Okay. And some stuff you can't avoid having to like grapple around all these fingers and stuff. So some of this stuff I maybe I'll keep the hand in there. So the hand's going to be in there, and then I might have to adjust that later. Same thing with this student here. So I'll make sure all that is one. It just leaves, again, it's just for ease of grabbing things. I will grab his pants, group his pants together. Another thing that I could probably do too is grab these pants and then I have his legs underneath. And for just the sake of, I don't know, maybe me wanting to be complicated, I'll group these guys probably together. Or I might leave them. I'm trying to think of, again, you know, if you're making like a toy or something, where are the parts of articulation going to be and what's going to be easiest for me to grab and manipulate. and going from there. So I'm going to grab all these hard surface materials again. Group that little dude. Now I'm starting to get a little bit more simple stuff to select. And again, this isn't going to be, oh, just grab and go and be done with it. This is still tons of work to be able to get this guy into a decent pose. But we're going to see what we can do. You can see that most of my stuff is fairly low res. I probably would have gone back in and, you know, remeshed even these little patches and things like that for ease of posing. And you can see how low everything is. So everything should work pretty well. And anything that's going to have really crazy time posing, we're going to try to work our pose around that. So for example, I may not try to move the hips as much, but I'll try to bend him forward without moving this and just kind of maybe rotate his whole body, such as like this first, right? To get orientation of the hips. So that way I don't have to select and bend all the hip stuff. So it kind of depends on kind of pose I want to go for, which right now I'm actually going to go to my little Pinterest real quick. And I'm going to look up, I don't know, like a jumping pose. It's always nice to have some sort of reference, even if you aren't focused on it, I think, or aren't going to, you know, copy it one for one. I think it's kind of nice to look and see what kind of interesting poses there are. So I can bring this over if my computer will let me. There we go. So I can bring this over. So I'm looking at jumping poses. There's a couple cool, interesting ones. This artist is really great. I think she goes by Grace Flu or Grass Flu on Instagram, but this pose is kind of cool. And again, I'm trying to think of stuff that looks like maybe he's holding one of his potions or something that makes sense for him jumping over an explosion, or like what could feel, you know, right or interesting. This is actually kind of a funny, interesting one, right? It makes him feel maybe more silly if you picture that if he's jumping over an explosion. In that sense, whereas something more like this type of posing is a bit more serious. So again, looking up this stuff to see, you know, what is going to make the most sense for our character and keeping our character in mind. You know, right now I'm trying to picture when you look up these references, some make sense and some don't. And you go, what could be interesting and what can't be interesting based on like what our character is doing, and getting something that feels kind of right in that area. I do like the idea of maybe he's throwing down, like he just threw down that potion, right, that he's jumping over. So we are going to go for something that maybe his arm's going to be in between his legs. So maybe something kind of close like that. It'd be interesting to get some foreshortening. And I like the contrast of, you know, the left hand is forward and the right foot forward and right hand forward and left foot back. Gives kind of like a cool contrapposto. So we'll see what we can come up with. But yeah, just be aware that I'm looking at poses and trying to get an idea of how this character will feel. Usually your first pose is also the pose that's sometimes the most boring one. So it just kind of depends. A lot of the times I'll do multiple versions of poses just to see I can get something interesting going. And again, then you have like options. And for something like sideshow collectibles or something like that, when you're working on that stuff, you definitely want to have some variation in your poses and whatnot, and have some options. Also, you want to try to think about, you know, what camera angle is this eventually going to be from? You know, if you're looking at him from the top down, which is, or if you're looking at him from below, which is kind of what I'm thinking, because you're going to be seeing the explosion and him like throwing it. Maybe he's throwing it at you. So trying to think of something like, where is he going to be looking and where is he going to be turned? Now, all this stuff can be very quick and rough to begin with, and then we can try to start to finalize something. I like to try to get some sort of form of curvature first, or initial base to go off of. So again, I've used all those polygroups so I could create easy selecting. If we want to bend his torso, maybe I'll mask all this first. I'm hitting Control Tab to soften my selections. Someone's got a dumb question, they say. Are you just hiding elements when you make them disappear? Yeah, that's what polygroups are for, so I can actually select things in order to start turning and moving stuff around. It's just a way of viewing, so it's still there, but if I only have this visible and I start moving this around, the things that are hidden won't be affected. Trying to be very careful because again, that midsection is very rough. I'm just trying to get a bend, a little bit of a bend into the torso. Yeah, these ads are not fun. Ignore that. Those are gross. Oh, the days of internet. There might be some stuff that gets a little wonky if I don't mask this stuff properly. So if he's facing this way, trying to think of what would be, you know, if he's in motion, what's going to be the arm or the leg that like makes most sense to be forward. I'm thinking this arm, his right arm, might be the one throwing down. Then his left is going to be, or then his right leg is going to be the one that's going back, right? So then we have a little bit of a extension and throw. They'll be throwing in between his legs. Yeah, so you want something that kind of deforms properly. I don't mind this not moving. I can always kind of correct that later. Because again, I'm trying to avoid hard surface things. You could, even if you want to, it'd be kind of a pain. But even if you wanted to, you could kind of leave out the hard surface stuff for now, and then go back and kind of adjust it later if you needed to. But again, these are all going to be very slight adjustments that I'm trying to make. I'm going to move that shoulder back in later, but I want to try to get some sort of form of... I can take this and I can adjust and move that back in if I need to, which is what the usefulness of having, you know, these all separated out. I can adjust these again after the fact too. So there's some stuff that I might try to make the adjustments now, and then there's some stuff again that might be easier to make later. It just all kind of depends. Try to move his legs around, see what we can get. So I'm going to try to keep the top half of his legs masked. So that way when I'm moving around his lower half, it should connect nicely. So I actually think what I'll do is also add a little bit of a twist to his pelvis area. And thankfully we have a lot of stuff in the way that can kind of hide. It's kind of the good and bad, right? There's going to be pros and cons to being able to kind of adjust this stuff. He's got a lot of stuff on him, but hopefully my idea is to, you know, move this all at once and have it feel like it's getting pushed back, right? So we'll have everything kind of fly backwards a bit to give him a feeling of like momentum. What I'll usually do is I'll alt snap this gizmo, move it up. It seems to be deforming okay. And again, it's gonna feel really stiff for probably a little while, and that's okay. I just want to get everything kind of in place because again, it's the same thing when I talk about, you know, color, when we talk about like the design of something. When we first started blocking out this character, it was really important to first get everything that you needed there first before making too many judgments on something. So my goal here is to get everything to a place that feels about right, and then making like micro adjustments to that. You know, and later I might have to realize like, oh, I need to turn him more. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And that's also totally part of the process. I'm gonna extend this leg out. See, once I extend this leg out, you're like, oh, I might need to push this leg even farther back. But that's kind of how I like to work this way, where I'm dragging wherever I'm rotating from. I'm trying to set the pivot point where the actual, bone would be is a lot easier, and also where the right orientation of this would be makes it a lot easier to be able to kind of adjust and move this guy properly. And this type of stuff, not too worried about it, right? Because I can go in and with the move topological, or I can mask this and move this back out if I wanted to. But that's also something that can come later if need be, but it's also really easy to fix right now as well. Thinking maybe he's pushing his paw off there. This hand probably needs to get extended more, because if you're throwing downward onto something, you probably have your arm a little bit more extended than that. I think what also is going to ultimately help him too is we're going to twist him a bit more, so he feels like he's being his body's kind of twisting this way. So that way he really feels like he's trying to throw in between his legs where that explosion is going to be, and he's jumping over it. Push this arm back and upward, maybe. Hello, 3D Pixel. Did I plan this pose already? I had kind of an idea of what I wanted, but we're kind of going in now and making tiny little adjustments and things. I made and sculpted like a little explosion that I figured it'd be cool if he jumped over. But other than that, kind of going free range here. Which again, can be good or bad, depending on how complicated you want to get with your pose. Now this guy is very complicated just in general, as far as because he has so much stuff on him. And that's where ultimately doing, ZBrush posing is not ideal, but for a live stream, it actually is going to be obviously way faster than going into Maya and things like that and doing a full-on rig on him or something like that, which is ultimately what I would normally do. Even for personal projects, I have a tendency to do that, just because it does give your character, you have way more control over your character. So I'm trying to think if we're just going to see him from maybe an angle that's like this, and the explosion's going to be kind of in this area. What's going to be interesting for that? So I'm going to twist him a bit more. Oh boy. He is a busy character. I'm going to pick all the things that I think need to turn, which would all be all the upper half here. So I'm selecting objects and softening things based on how much they need to move, and then reconfiguring. So basically I'm trying to get a similar softness to everything. So that way when I move it, it feels like it's all twisting. So for example, you know, if I twist him now, this apron part won't twist with him. So I want to kind of cut this in half so I can grab again. I block this section out for that reason, because now I can go in and I can select the top half of it and keep the bottom. What's up, Synth? It's my main fan. My fan's here. I don't feel lonely anymore. Oh my goodness. Thank you. In the process of posing. Lots of fun. But yeah, so you can see that I'm choosing to select, you know, things like this because I want these to stay right where they are. But you want to think of it as almost kind of, if you guys know what rigging is and how to rig, it's almost like painting like temporary skin weights onto your character, because I know that like his belt shouldn't move, but this should move. These can't move, but his belt, but his little sash thing can move, and the rest of his body's going to twist. And then of course the ultimate test is to run it and see how it looks. I twist this. You can kind of see. You can see like what's deforming is what should be deforming. So we don't have, you know, hard surface things deforming. This might be a little too much, so I can soften it and then twist it again, and I can see the result that I'm getting, and that feels like a little better, right? And there's some stuff that's so low that, you know, this might, you might not be able to get away with this, but I can try to soften it again and then try to mask the very bottom and see what I get. That feels maybe a little better. So yeah, you can see it's very, very complicated to get the right amount of twisting in this character. But I do want to twist him. I'm just trying to, so right now I'm trying to really look at it because you know, it's a lot of work to make this selection. So I'm trying to really make sure that whatever I'm committing to, I'm happy with. So I don't have to go and do that all over again, because it's a really big pain in the butt. So I'm trying to think ahead of myself. I'm trying to see what feels right, but that feels, it's getting there. I kind of like from the back, he feels like he's just running full sprint, which is kind of fun. So again, as I'm making adjustments to my character, I'm like, oh, is it more interesting if maybe he's running past his own, you know, maybe he's throwing the smoke bomb back, but he's really just running over it, or is he going to jump over it? And you guys in the chat can say maybe which one you guys prefer before I finish anything and get too ahead on myself. But, you know, what could be a more interesting pose? And again, because I have one that's going to be running or jumping, it's easy enough to do both and see which one you like. But, you know, if he's running, his focus is probably going to be more forward rather than looking down at the explosion. So we can see maybe what we're feeling on that end. And yes, and someone has asked me on Twitch if I went to the Transpose Master, and that is exactly what I did. So now what I think I could do is grab this dude and grab all the so it's this belt, right, that we're going to be moving back. So I can mask all that. Actually, what I can do is unmask the whole thing. I can make the pivot point up here. And I can try to swing this back. So it feels like it's, again, carrying some momentum and weight. And then I can push this back into a... Oops. Being very choiceful about and can bring this back out. I might have gone a little too much on that, actually. I'm gonna go back. So focused, sorry. I'm like supposed to be talking and doing this at the same time, but some of this stuff requires the utmost attention. Try to get all this feeling right. And again, there's some things that I'm trying to get just the general area. When it comes to solving and you know, pushing down or pushing back his shoulder or things like that, you don't have to do that right now because, again, they're all separate parts anyway. So not the end of the world to have to make these adjustments later. What kind of action is he doing for this pose? So we're trying to do a jumping pose is basically what we're trying to do. So I sculpted a little, you can see our not pose model. I sculpted a little explosion here. I'm actually not going to click it because I'm a little afraid it's going to mess up T-pose. Well, that's something else. But yeah, so the idea is that he's going to be jumping over an explosion. I just want to get these out of his body. That's all I'm trying to do. We've got all those little balls and things in there. Cool. I can probably take this back too later and push this out and whatnot. I might not want to change it right now for a second, but hello, somebody said that they're new to ZBrush. Should I do all of this in 45? No, is that how long I've been running? Thank you. No, this has been a character that we've been working on for 3 episodes, I believe. I think this is the 4th installment, which will be probably the last installment, which is good timing because we're all taking a break to go hang out with family and do stuff, do some fun stuff for the holidays and whatnot. So I'm trying to get this guy all nice and posed and finished for you guys. Just in time to take a break, which I guess is a good mention that I believe, I don't remember when exactly next Tuesday is. I think it's the 27th, but next Tuesday we will not be streaming. So just keep in mind that if you guys try to pop in and say hello next Tuesday, no one will be here to say hello. So we'll be coming back, I believe, on the 3rd of January. But the posing we've started today. You can see I'll have to resculpt quite a bit of the clothes, but I'm trying to keep it as clean as possible. Part of me is wondering if it would be more interesting if his other leg was also forward, so he kind of was like hopping over it, because that is one of the poses that I see. Or maybe saw parkour people kind of jump that way too. It might feel like there's more motion and momentum in his jump if I do that. So we're gonna try it. Again, things will change a lot as you kind of feel out the pose and feel what's working and what isn't. We'll grab this whole thing here. Again, I'm not super scared about some of this stuff getting really wonky. Because again, it's also fold and close, so it's one of those things that I'll probably have to go back in and sculpt anyway. So we'll see how this feels instead. I think that could be more fun. We're gonna parkour who has his one leg tucked in and one's kind of like his toes are kind of spread out. I kind of like that pose. Synth is asking, each character usually gets 4 episodes to complete. It's going to kind of depend on the character. Some are easier than others, and it just kind of all depends. But I am going to try to we're going to be trying to do a character a month, so that would be 4 weeks. But yeah, it all just kind of depends on how I'm feeling with the character, how the character's coming along, and you know, some might be more complicated than others and things like that. So much do I work offline on the character? Depends. Right now I worked to finish up and create a little bit more assets for you guys and whatnot. So I kind of finished up what his little machine doohickey thing that he has on his back and shoulders and whatnot. Added a couple more elements, sculpted a few more things. Nothing too crazy, I would say. I mean, I worked a lot on him just because it was fun, but it was more like tinkering than it was like probably getting any actual sculpting done. So yeah, it does just kind of depend. There's nothing too crazy though that I sculpt off stream. It's just little things to like clean up and to finalize and things like that. Maybe a Xeno next time. I sculpt so many Xenos for my job. Don't make me sculpt a Xeno. Don't make me do it, you guys. I want to sculpt fun style. Maybe a stylized Xeno. I'll think about it. I sculpt a lot of Xenos for my job, so we'll see. But yeah, Xenos are always very tricky because they're organic and yet also hard surface at the same time, usually. So they always kind of have a bit more interesting things to try to accomplish with the way at least the way I go about sculpting them is almost like from a hard surface standpoint sometimes, just because they can be super, super tricky. So I'm looking at my character from very far away because one, I'm looking at the silhouette of it even in the black and white to see how well it's reading, and then also if it's not reading very well from afar, it's not going to read any better when you get close up to it. So making sure that your maquette reads properly is super, super important. Happy Xeno? Yeah, maybe a happy Xeno. I'll do a happy Xeno for you guys. We'll see. Gotta get more twisting up into his upper torso. Oh, yay. Everyone say thanks me for putting so much stuff on him. So much stuff. Carry everything. I know. put too many things on him. Makes it very fun to sculpt in ZBrush or to pose in ZBrush. Yeah, we're having a good time. It's fine. I'm fine. It's cool. Don't worry about it. Not stressing at all. It's totally cool. But yeah, like I said, I mean, most of the time, the thing to do is to be rigging it. That would be the ideal situation. But I don't think, as fun as this might be to watch for posing, I guarantee you don't want to watch me rig. So, because nobody wants to watch anybody rig. Yeah, this guy doesn't have the secret inventory. His inventory is just out and about. You're right. Whoop. So trying to get some more twisting into them, and that's definitely helping. So now we can kind of start to straighten out that arm a bit more. Because before I was trying to straighten it out, but it wasn't really in the right place. So now we can kind of stretch it out a bit more. Someone on Twitch saying this is rad. Thank you. But I'm sorry if you guys are seeing the repeat messages. I'm assuming it's something weird with the connection. I'm going to assume you guys aren't all repeating yourselves. Maybe you are. I don't know. So now you can see that for the silhouette, I want to make sure that I can see his hand through his legs. So actually we can move his arm a little bit more towards center. Now that we have like more twisting that's happening, so we can pull it more like that. Because again, you kind of want that readability throughout your whole pose. So you can see that in the silhouette, I'm really trying to focus on where that hand is going to be, and I'll pose the hand and stuff too. So we'll be throwing something down, but I want to make sure that from the front or from certain angles and whatnot that you're really getting a decent readability on that pose. So for the hand pose, so it gives me that Sly Cooper vibe. Yeah, I agree. My favorite. I love Sly Cooper. The Thievius Raccoonus. Just masking finger at a time. If I can hold the buttons long enough for me to want to do it. There we go. Again, the big thing about, positioning anything, but especially the fingers, you want to make sure that you're putting your gizmo where that joint actually pivots from. So that way you get proper deformation in your hand. You can hide this, and so that way I can focus on just getting the hand where I want it. We could try to, I'm trying to think, we could try to attempt, there's actually something I showed my Gnomon class for our last week, was showing how they used to do outlining back in the day. So for Sly Cooper, how they have the cool, outline geometry, it's actually really easy to make, and it always looks really cool and fun. So maybe that's something we could try to attempt with this character. If we're feeling it, to kind of give them like a cool stylized vibe. Feeling okay. I just hide his little wrist in there. Bye. See you later. Don't worry about it. It's cool. Cool. I think moving his leg out a little bit more. I love moving these legs, man. They're so fun. So fun to move. Having such a good time. All right. We're going to move his leg. Again, I'm treating this more like as if I'm doing a maquette. So if like patchwork doesn't, sit properly, one, I can always fix it, but two, it's really easy to sculpt that again. I'm not super worried. So that's why for some details, like if you're making a maquette type character, and you just want to 3D print it or do whatever, a lot of these cool, fun details, they're usually a lot easier to create after the pose. Unless you want to spend the time to rig it, which at Legacy I actually used to. So when we did one of the Iron Man maquettes, because he is so hard surface, it was just going to be impossible to pose him in ZBrush. And so I actually took it upon myself to rig it and make sure that everything moved properly. So that way when we did multiple poses for Sideshow, none of his geometry would get messed up. And so it was a lot easier to pick multiple iterations of poses for one thing, but then to also make sure that all the hard work of the other artists that were working on the Iron Man didn't have to go back and do like a bunch of rework. Rigging is a super valuable tool to be able to help your fellow members. Just trying to see how I can get this guy to feel a little more hoppy. Been seeing a lot of good action pose reference online, like Graphic Studios. I think I know which posing reference you're talking about. But there's tons of really cool reference of posing out there. I mean, even on Pinterest, when I just looked up, you can look up parkour poses and find some really interesting, cool stuff. Cool. Now I'm wondering if he should be holding, eventually he'll be holding like another little potion in his hand, which in that case, I could either pose it now, or I could also try to kind of, get it in about the right spot, since his hands are underneath there anyways, and then I can adjust later if I need to. But I think it'd be cool if he was holding like another potion. Also gonna try another thing. Just because silhouette-wise, I feel like the tail's fighting with this other hand, so I'm curious to see if I move it to the other side. The tail, thankfully, can kind of be moved pretty easily. I can also use the bend curve tool later if I wanted to make adjustments on the tail, but because it's such an organic thing, I can really push this and just do what I want with it, and I'm not really too worried about it. Just kind of whatever is going to make it look cool. Because I also want to make sure that there feels like there's a lot of movement in his tail, like as if there's a lot of, that he's flying by something. That I feel like feels a little better. Now it's not competing with the other arm, which is what I kind of was fighting with before. No, he's got a butt hanging out. Okay, we can just hide that. No worries. See, later you can go back in and kind of smooth out some of these things. And I try to kind of even out some of the topology so that way when it comes time for ZBrush to remesh it and put it back into our actual scene, it'll be a lot easier for it. And you should get a little less kind of like fixes and stuff later if you do that now. So that's what we're trying to do. All right, so I think our might have to come up a little more. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking, guys. Let's see. I like the idea of, again, I'll be re-sculpting it, but like really making the cowl feel like it's coming downward and then making this feel like it's getting pushed up. And then I'm gonna also mask the hood and I'm gonna pull the hood back so that way it feels like it's flying. Again, we're trying to get as much momentum out of this pose, trying to really feel out how stretched can we get this character. And you can see that from the bottom, it's kind of a bit of a hot mess, but again, that's why I don't mind keeping this all separate for now and then adjusting the anatomy and stuff later. Because, if this arm is really far back, that means that the tricep's going to be a little bigger and the bicep's going to be more extended. So it's actually going to flatten out more. The pecs will stretch. The deltoids will get kind of chonkier and bigger. So things like that we can adjust after the fact. So that way it starts to feel, like it's muscle moving around. I can smooth that out and hide that in there. So I'm just trying to adjust some of the anatomy stuff that's kind of being wonky, but again, it's really easy to know that the deltoid's going to over insert on this bicep and tricep, so it's kind of easier to make these adjustments when the character is kind of split up that way, especially when it's just in this case where it's for a pose. You're going to get a lot of pinching in this area. I'm going to move and adjust all this stuff too. Hide a hand. I do kind of bounce around. You'll see that I don't focus on one area for too long because again, when I pose one thing and it leads my eye to another thing that maybe isn't feeling quite right or something like that, and you just kind of want to jump around and make sure that everything's kind of feeling completed at the same time. Again, making sure I put it's really important just on the positioning of where I'm putting this gizmo to make sure that the joint bends the way I want it to bend. I can go back in later if I want to because of the geometry and kind of like tighten or squish these things, because on the inside it'll squish more, whereas on the outside it'll stretch out a bit. So it's thinking about stuff like that. So I'm okay with like inflating or moving this out a bit more and then letting this stretch and trying to just make sure that I'm keeping the bone landmark. So I want to make this pointy. I want to make sure that this stays pointy as to like where the thumb bends when you look at your own thumb. No, I am doing something that's kind of odd, but I'm not worried about it right now. Is again, I'm moving 2 pieces geometry, so there's his hand that's in there as well. But it's made from the same geo, so as long as I'm selecting with them both, I shouldn't be getting too much warping on the inside. But again, I don't really care about his other hand. It's just so happens that I didn't bother deleting it or getting rid of it before posing, which is totally fine. Parkour. Although I think he's better at it than Michael is, so. I'm assuming you guys can hear the music, and I'm very happy that I have music. Because sometimes it's very boring just to be in a silent room, not hearing anything. Hands are always super weird to do in ZBrush. There's usually a lot of warping and deforming that happens to make them feel proper again. Because again, your hand's so complicated when it comes to, you know, where are the joints versus what squishes versus what can stretch and things like that. I might be able to get away with posing these two at the same time. We'll see. My goal is, again, just to get something almost there, and then I can adjust a little bit later. Yeah, really fat finger there. I like the music. Grooving along? Sweet. I'm glad you guys are grooving. I didn't pick it, so I'm sorry. You'd be hearing much weirder music if I picked it. You guys have weird bands you guys like to listen to, throw them in there. I will listen to anything. Ooh. Oh, there we go. I was like, what kind of music do I like to listen to while working on art? It depends. It really depends. What if sometimes I'll just listen to Dragon Ball. Like Dragon Ball soundtracks are cool. Something that's like really intense and fun. I don't know why, but sculpting to like something like that is always kind of pleasurable and entertaining. But a lot of time I just listen to, you know, my own weird, strange music. Lately, I've been listening to a lot of Jonathan Colton because I can't get his songs out of my head. They're very catchy. You should listen to the song about an octopus because we saw an octopus today and I was very excited. So now I have to go listen to a song about an octopus. This hand is getting funky, but that's okay. The pinky got all weird, but that's okay because again, it's so low that you can adjust it again. And you're like, look at that, back to normal. Yay. So not too worried about it. Again, when it comes to posing in ZBrush, it's one of those things where it's like, it's okay to kill your darlings. It's always okay to kill your darlings in our type of work, but it's really important to just know that, you know, some things you're like, I have to go back and adjust, or as long as you keep it really low, you can always put the topology kind of right back where it was and be pretty happy with it. Dragon Ball will always add more intensity to my sculpts, but sometimes I like listening to just, you know, lo-fi type, you know, chill beats. I'm trying to think of stuff that I've listened to. I like Cake. Cake's awesome. I like listening to Cake. gorillas, so like listen to the gorillas. And then stuff like this that we're listening to right now is totally fine because it helps not be too much of a distraction. Sometimes just old-fashioned music can sometimes be too much of a distraction. Eventually you'll have a little potion. That's my goal. Cool. Yeah, I like the tail on the other side because it leads. It kind of has like a pretty nice through line or like a line of action into his other foot. So again, just making sure that we have like some really nice momentum. I actually am going to take back that last move. I'm going to do this instead. I think that will be better. And I can adjust it later. So here's something that I can grab as a whole, so it's a whole piece. And I'm going to push it back and rotate it. A lot of this stuff I will have to adjust later, like I said before. Oops. I masked that. There we go. This is super low, so again, whoops, I am masking some stuff that I don't want to mask. There we go. I can push this that way. You can see how low all this stuff is, so I can, you know, go in and make all these really easy little adjustments. And then the more topology you have later, once you know, get the pose that you want, and like this will become a little easier. So these little cool details are always really fun to add, where it feels like, you know, it's flapping or flying, or it's being lifted. It adds a lot of energy to the piece when you add stuff like this. And it's funny that it seems obvious, but I think a lot of people kind of forget this sometimes. Okay, his belt is all one piece, so let's now start. Now I can, look at all that stupid crap that's on there. Good Lord, what was I thinking? I'm gonna auto group it. Oh wait, actually, yeah, I'm gonna auto group it, and then I'm going to group by similar, using polygroups, and then I should be able to mask out merge similar groups. There we go. So now I should be able to select the potions. Sneeze. This got selected because it's probably the same birds as the I think all this smaller stuff I'm going to adjust after the fact, so I'm just going to mask this. Because again, I just want to move the hard surface stuff in the place that feels right. And I can move each of these individually later if I wanted to. They're pretty tight onto his belt, so they don't have to lift up too high, but I just want to make sure that I feel like they're, you know, being raised or being jostled around a bit. Jostled, fucking word. Then I'm going to take this dude. I'm going to swing it out. It's kind of cool to be able to do that because then you actually get to focus on the piece, so it's not tucked away. And now it's something that, you know, if this was a maquette, people can be like, ooh, what is that? You know, and they can look at it. So having it swing out is also kind of helpful to your audience, just being like, ooh, what is this thing? You know, they can kind of come to their own conclusions as to what this thing is for. So that's kind of fun too. I might adjust that after because it's not connected, but again, I know that belt is separate pieces from all the other stuff, so I can adjust that after the fact. Okay. I think that's all I want to do. I can take the hood and I can flail it out after the fact, so let's go ahead and say yes. And part of me is curious if that looks better. I'll keep it like that for now. That's easy enough to adjust later. Cool. So let's say yay. So now that we have that, we can go back up to our T-pose and we can go T-pose sub T, and it's gonna go and take our model. As long as it doesn't crash and do some crazy things, should be good to go. And we'll see that our model will change into our pose thing. And we'll see how much stuff we may have to change. So there's the first one. Now it's all coming back together. If I did my job okay, there shouldn't be anything too crazy to fix. I feel like I was pretty careful with stuff, but you can see it's making all the little adjustments and putting all the subtools in the place that it has to. It's a pretty cool tool, not gonna lie. It's very exciting when like you get it all done. You're like, oh yeah, there it is, you know, and then you get to see it in your high res version with all your sculpted pants and all those things. Now we'll have to adjust again that sculpt now, and now it's done. It took 48 seconds. Awesome. Boom. Cool. So now we have our character all posed out and everything, with all the color and everything on it. And now anything that doesn't make sense before, I can go in and kind of adjust. So like, you know, if this little bottle got messed up, or, you know, these belts, like I said before. So this belt got messed up, so now I can go to the lowest subdivision level and I can just start to move it back to where it kind of was. Someone from YouTube is saying, focusing on character animation today with great background, glancing at your amazing work. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I thought there was going to be a question in there. Sorry. I always feel weird just saying, I mean, I appreciate everyone saying like, oh, cool, but it always makes me laugh because I'm like, oh, I thought I was answering a question. And they're like, yes, cool, man. I'm like, oh, okay. That's nice. Thank you. Just adjusting this stuff now. See, that was much easier to adjust right now than it was before. As you can see, some of the anatomy stuff, for the most part, stayed okay. But now what's really easy is if there's something that's feeling funky, such as this right here, I can go down to my lowest subdivision and I can start moving this around. Going to move topological as well, and starting to push back where these muscles all go. You know, smoothing some of this stuff out, and adjusting where the bicep would be maybe less straightened. Oops, I have symmetry on. Hopefully that didn't mess with the other side, did it? Oh, okay, cool, that's fine. I mean, I have to adjust a lot of stuff anyway. But this is the part where, you know, sculpting, someone mentioned, like, do I sculpt in pose sometimes? And the answer is yes, and this is why it's really helpful to sculpt out of pose and with asymmetry, because eventually you will be posing your characters, and even if it's something like having to create blend shapes later, understanding how these muscles stretch and flex and do different things when they're in different positions is super important. So that way I can now go in and make all the adjustments as to, you know, where's his shoulder blade now and where's all the things now that I can relate to. And some of it, you know, in the final result you may not see, but I know his arms you see. And I can start adjusting like where the twisting and where the musculature properly would be and go and start kind of making these little micro adjustments. And then I can start sculpting on top of that. Because you can see the deltoid got kind of lost in there, but we're going to make sure we're going to bulk it up now. I moved topological on this way. I can start bulking up some of the anatomy stuff so it starts feeling a little more natural. Stretching out where the pec is. You can pinch this side, right? So if your arm's coming forward, it's going to make tension in that pectoralis muscle. So you can bring it together to make sure that it feels like it's pinching together, right? Where this is going to feel super, super stretched. So it's things like that that bring a lot of life into your characters. Sin says, thanks for joining the archetype thing. He likes me. I have a fan, so I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it's been super fun so far, and I'm excited to do more and more and more. I mean, that's the plan, is to just keep going until somebody tells me to stop it or knock it off, which I don't think they will anytime soon, so I'm pretty happy about that. But yeah, you can see that it's really easy to adjust this stuff because I have that low res that I'm basing off of. And now when I go up, you know, this stuff looks kind of weird, but again, I can just kind of start sculpting on top of it and fixing all this anatomy stuff and starting to blend it back again together. So there's always going to be something, a bit of like a fix, you know, and whatnot, and trying to adjust. You know, this got super, super stretched, so you might even have to bring back his delt, you know, because his pec might be a little long. We might have messed up where his joint was. There's a lot of little things like that, and that just comes with training your eye with where this stuff is too, and what's going to feel right. Because we don't want it to feel like his shoulder got popped out of socket, so we're trying our best to make sure that it feels all congruent and correct. And now I can take actually, I think I have one. I have one at the bottom, but I'm just gonna. We can turn on our explosion. Yeah. Our pose now looks cool, guys. If this was a maquette, you would want to do something where you would attach the foot to like wherever the smoke is, right? I think we did that for Iron Man, actually. It's very reminiscent of that. But for this case, because I'm not worried about that part, then I'm just going to let him float, because it's always really cool to not have to have like some sort of weird rod or something like that for your pose. Cool. So now I'm going to re-sculpt the... You can see that the sculpt actually still stuck pretty well, considering that, you know, we changed so much. But now we don't need some of the bending or some of the stretching. But you can see if you deform it properly, a lot of the folds stay pretty accurate. Like the one on the right or left is right, my left. Like all these folds are still pretty nice. We can do a bit more bunching and stuff now, but now I'm going to go ahead and stretch this stuff out. So I'm going to smooth this out and start trying to sculpting some stuff. Someone on Twitch is saying, I'm thinking of learning hair systems. Should I learn XGen or Houdini? I think that really depends on whether you want to be... It never hurts to learn both. I'll always say, like, you know, if you want to learn both, totally. For character art stuff, we tend to use XGen. I use XGen for character stuff because then we generate cards out of it because I'm in games. But that being said, Houdini is also an excellent tool for doing any of those things too. I mean, you can procedurally model in Houdini. It's just one's a bit more, I would say Houdini's far more technical. But that being said, XGen can also be technical, but it's far less technical than Houdini is. So as an artist, I prefer using XGen. Because XGen also works really well with the fiber mesh in ZBrush. So you can use fiber mesh in ZBrush to get out some curves. And then you can take those curves and export them out and bring them into XGen and turn them into descriptions. And then you can plot that out with hair. So you can actually use the grooming tools within ZBrush to kind of like groom out stuff really quickly. Which is super helpful. So it kind of depends on like what tools you like and what tools you want to use. But yeah, both are really good options. As a character artist, I would say XGen though. Houdini's a beast. So now I'm just adding some more crunching folds up into his pants here. And then these are going to spread out and probably connect to wherever his knee is. His knee is it's still slightly bent, so we can kind of exaggerate that more. I can pop out where his knee would be and smooth out this, right? Because again, looking at the silhouette, you really want a nice distinction of like where is that knee? And where all these folds going to. You can kind of start bunching some of this stuff back up to get your geometry again that was in the crotch before that maybe got stretched out or did whatever. Yeah, we're getting something. And again, I don't care about the legs, so you can just hide them. They can go away. And if I wanted to, I could redraw the patches, or I can just throw them back on somewhere. Someone on Twitch is asking, is smoke hard to do in 3D? Is that why they 2D'd it in Arcane? No, actually doing the 2D for Arcane, I would say, is almost more difficult. But also that, while one or the other may not be more difficult, they both come with their pros and cons. But the biggest thing as to why Arcane went that way is just because of style, right? So it wouldn't look as cool and it wouldn't really match the style that they went for if they decided to just do like 3D CG smoke. Because most of the backgrounds, most of the characters are hand painted. Most of the backgrounds are 2D painted with 3D projection. It's a huge blend of like paint and 3D, right? So ultimately, it's not really always about, in that case, and in most cases, it's not about what's easiest. It's about what's going to look the best and what's going to feel the best for the project that you're going for. Now, this character's stylized. One, I didn't want to go into Blender to create like actual smoke and do a render. I totally can later if I wanted to. But I feel like for the style that we created this character, I thought it would be fun to sculpt an explosion. And I hand painted the explosion actually kind of like Arcane, where this light is fake, you know? So what actually looks like it's being exploded from within is just hand painted to make it feel like it's transparent, but it's actually, you know, not, because it's just a ZBrush sculpt. So that stuff to me is just also really fun and felt like it was very fitting of the character that we were making. But again, you know, that has its own challenges along with trying to make something that feels, you know, realistic using, you know, an actual like something like Houdini or real CG, smoke and clouds and things like that. But I just felt like for the project that we were doing for this, didn't quite blend. And then, you know, for an example like Arcane, it really was about the style that they went for and the artistic choices that they were making for that show. I love Arcane too. We were recently watching the making of, because I think there's one more episode of the making of, but it's fascinating. It's absolutely amazing to see where they came from and how they got to where they were. And yeah, the show is an amazing production. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's an actually good video game show. Video game artists and players finally got a show that they've been wanting to have for a long time. So good on Riot for doing that, for sure. It is no easy feat. His butt is all weird. Again, a lot of rework, right? Especially with something like how much scrunching is going on in the upper pants, and then making it feel like, you know, this part's going to be tight on him, and then it's back to baggy, but then this part's also tight, so like his pants and where his butt is stretching a lot because of the pose. It's the tightest part on the pants, so making sure that that's feeling like it's stretching both ways and feeling really tight is can be kind of tricky. You want to see like where the point of tension is, you know. On this side it's probably over here, whereas here I think it's still on this side, but it's overlapping onto the other side, and then seeing where the in-between sculpt or fold would be. So yeah, just trying to get this to feel okay. I feel like I got it really easily on the front, and then the back was just like, nah. So it all just kind of depends. Cool. And then I have to remember where this attached. Let's see. Now again, if I wanted to, I can make sure that also be aware that, you know, when you do this, all my stuff is in symmetry. So just make sure that you're really out of symmetry before you start messing with your stuff, because then it's going to get really messy. I'm just doing a really soft smooth on this, on my mask. I can pop this out. Boop. I can move this. There's all these little details, right, that we're trying to fix and finalize. Cyntha's asking, do I ever try to keep your more finer details like seams and stitches on separate layers so that when you're posing, you can turn those layers off and not mess up those details? They'll still get messed up, even if they're on a layer. And the thing about layers in ZBrush, if you're actually talking about using layers, like these layers, you have to bake them to do a lot of stuff. The moment you add layers to your sculpt, tons of stuff becomes inaccessible to you because of the way layers work. So it's kind of for me personally, they work great in a lot of scenarios, but I find them to be also kind of a pain in the ass. So I don't use them. A lot of the time, again, if I'm posing something like this, this doesn't even have geometry yet. Like I haven't even sculpted on this, so I'm actually going to sculpt on it asymmetrically. Now that I have the pose, right? So to each their own. In this case too, you also want to think about, I work in games, so before posing and stuff, I would probably be baking all that texture and all that detail down. And then it's just when the texture stretches with the rig, it's just going to stretch. And it's the rigger's job to make sure that, you know, stretches with ease, you know, and it's not too bad and too much warping and whatnot. But you are just going to get some texture stretching. But yeah, my goal is to try to not do that stuff. Or can try not to have it warp as much as possible. I'm just making adjustments to stuff. Why are you being all weird? Stop it. Oh, that's why it's being all weird. I'm just going to auto group this. I know these things seem like really small details now, right? Me zooming in here and being like, yeah, we're gonna adjust this thing now and move this over. And but, you know, it's all these little details, especially when it comes to like if you're making a maquette. All this stuff is super important. But it's one of those things too where now you can see that, you know, now my thought process is, okay, how much would this pinch or warp or bend? And what makes actual sense. So it probably wouldn't warp all that much. So you're going, okay, maybe this can't move, and now it's impeding his movement. And if that's the case, then you're like, oh, well, maybe my design needs to change a bit, right? Because I don't want him to not be able to lift his leg up because he put his beakers in the wrong spot. So even stuff like this, like, yeah, I'm gonna make it work, but also think about, okay, if that's happening, then it's pinching on his cloth right here. So maybe make it feel like it's hitting his cloth, right? Make sure that it has weight to it, so that he knows that it's there because it's pinching onto his, you know, clothes and whatnot. Oh yeah, Bernini sculpt at its best right now, right, guys? If you have layers, I can't easily go back into ZBrush and use those features. Yeah, that's the hardest part. Well, also, the other thing too, why I don't have subdivisions on a lot of stuff too, is because I can still go back right now and make, you know, I can insert edge loops into here to help with the stretching of all this stuff if I wanted to. And things like that. So there's a lot of stuff that, you know, I want to make sure that I'm finalizing first, and getting all the primary stuff down before going into, you know, all those other details. So yeah, I like to keep my stuff as editable as possible, basically, until I have to move up a subdivision level. I'm trying to find this potion thing right now in my long list of crap. There it is. Okay. Because I'm going to adjust. I have these little guys, and I'm going to move these up here. Let me turn this all off. So I have these little guys attaching to the belt. If I go to my belt, turn that on so I can see that, and then I can take this, and these little guys were stretching out to this. So again, these don't have subdivisions either, so I can easily move these around. This also might be a good time to auto group all these. And commitment issues? Yeah, me too. That's probably, don't give away my secrets. That's really why I have the issue with it, is I don't want to commit to anything. Damn it, you know me too well. It's only been 4 weeks. Someone on YouTube is asking for how much have you had to change a design after you rigged an animated character, which brought up issues from geometry clothing? All the time. It constantly changes. So, you know, that's a thing where, you know, if there's something that's crashing, shoulder pauldrons. If you're doing armor, it's very, very common to go back and have to be like, hey, this, you know, kneecap when he bends his knee doesn't do X, Y, and Z. And again, I used to work in practical effects, and so that's even more prominent because a person's actually wearing it, so we can't, you know, squish a person's face the way we can squish geometry. And so for that, we definitely have to go back and go, you know, hey, this gauntlet, you know, doesn't fit the right way, or so we need to like make it a little bigger. The forums, you know, the person that's going on their forums kind of long, or this or that. So there's a lot of stuff that's very tailored to who's going to be wearing it and stuff like that. So it's constantly adjusting. And games is no different with stuff like that. It's super, super common to go back and adjust all these things after the fact. Now, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing right now is just strictly for this pose, right? Because we're doing it as if it's like going to be in the cat or something like that. So, but in this case, we'd be, you know, simulating some little physics to have his, you know, little things bounce around and stuff like that. Did I? Oh no, I moved the balls without moving the things within the balls. Don't worry guys, it's cool. I fixed it. But yeah, so there's constant readjusting, basically. Which is why, again, I do like to keep my stuff as editable as possible. Just so that way, at any moment's change when we need to adjust some stuff, we can. So I'm going to go ahead and merge these guys down, because again, these also don't have subdivision levels yet. So this is the nice part about working this way, is I can merge this down, and now I can make sure that the liquid follows along with this little potion bottle, because I'm going to snap the little nut to the little leather thing that I made here. So I can bring that in. This might be a little nitpicky, but hey, you know, what I want to do, leave me alone. Here we go. Oh, we gotta add the hood, huh? Guys, don't let me forget things. We're gonna go ahead and select. We could probably they're not gonna let me group by these normals. Should. Ooh, we're getting really colorful there. Let's see if we can do that. Cool. A little thing. Oh, there is an inside to this, so actually, you know what? Scratch all that. It might be easier just to mask it and see what happens. Turning off symmetry. Oh, because of symmetry, maybe I actually did select. Damn symmetry, getting at me. Here we go. See what that does. I'm just slowly moving and adjusting this. Do I ever use the default red wax when sculpting? Heck no, that thing's so ugly. It's the ugliest shader ever. No, I actually go to the basic shader, and then there's a little button. Oh my gosh, stop doing the brushes. If you pick a brush, you can say save the starter material. One thing to note, I like using the skin shader material, but do not set it as your startup material, because what it does is it'll duplicate it or it'll rename it. Say there's one that says startup material, and it'll break some of the automations in ZBrush, such as UVing, because for whatever reason, when you do UVs on stuff in ZBrush, it changes it to be the skin shader material. So doing that will actually like mess up your sculpt, and it's really obnoxious. It'll like break the ZBrush for some reason. So don't set skin shader, even though I like skin shader, don't set it as your basic material. Ooh, this will be cool. I get so excited with stuff. I love stuff that like hits other things. So this would puff out, right? And like hit his shoulder and would try to puff out, but then it's getting hit by the belt, right? So we can kind of squish that. It's getting all nice and tight in there. I love stuff like that. It's always fun. All these tiny little micro adjustments that are very entertaining for me. We can make sure that this feels like it's stretching and getting squished. Again, a lot of this stuff is just really feeling like how tight would this feel as it's like pushing across this stuff or getting compressed by belts or, you know, going over the shoulder and then catching some air and little wind, right? And getting pushed down again. And some of my, again, that's why I don't mind sculpting some of the folds, because some of it will still look okay, and then some other stuff I may have to go back in and sculpt more of. So like the ones on the hood, at least on this part of the hood, were okay, but now I can go back in and rethink where, you know, that stretching happens and occurs. Because now, especially that we have this whole part here that's getting squished, we can kind of wrap all this and think about where's that point of tension coming from. And now the point of tension is coming from his shoulder as well, so we can make sure that his shoulder's getting all that. Yeah, so many artists don't like using it. Just doesn't look very good, and then also if you're trying to color stuff, you can't really color anything, so it's just kind of a weird material. But it is what it is. It's just a weird startup material. So since I was also wondering if I know why ZBrush always names the first tab tool the name of the save file, I always insert a star at the top. I do too. I think this has a star. Yeah, you can see this one has a star. So I do that too. I don't know why it does that. It just does. Regardless of, you know, what you try to do to it, it will always do that. So yeah, a good habit for me is to always put in something. And if you're maquette building, you know, if we're making something like this and it's a maquette, what I'll actually put as the first thing will be like a 1-inch cube. So it'll be something that, you know, still has use, but I don't really care about the name of it. So yeah, I still like to do stuff like that. Kind of thickening up these fur. Kind of works out that these got very stretched because it feels like it's getting pulled. I mean, you could go really crazy, and it's really fun actually to like sculpt like blurring. So you could do something where like this hand, for example, you could duplicate it, and if you do like the hook, snake hook brush, as long as you're not with color. You know, you could sculpt like a blur effect. Make it feel like he's going very fast. I don't think he's going to be that fast, but it's a cool effect to be able to pull off, and you can do it pretty quickly. Yeah, awesome for punches or, you know, tons of stuff. I did a Vegeta sculpt, and I have his kick that's kind of got like a cool little blur effect to it. So this is a really easy way to, you know, add something like that. I'm gonna duplicate this. Delete hidden. We gotta give him his little potion in his hand. So I'm gonna move this over. And for the sake of this, we're gonna needs to be a little bigger, right? I'm just gonna make it a little bigger so we can hold it. Maybe the top would probably be like that, right? I did pretty okay with posing the hand, considering I wasn't sure how it was going to be held. I would probably go back and adjust some of it more, but I think for the sake of what we've got, since we're almost out of time, looking pretty good. We can now change the color on this one, so maybe it's a, I don't know, what other colors do we have here? We could do maybe like a tealish one, like a tealy green. Also do something where this would be fun. Maybe pop the cap off. We're gonna pretend this stuff doesn't exist in it. I'm gonna grab this one and this one. Bear with me, I swear it's gonna be cool. Oh yeah, okay. I have a secret, I have a cheat, so this is why it's going to be really easy. If I can find it. I think I can find it. Let's see. Creature, character, environment? I think it's environment. Oh yeah. Let's see if we can find one. That could be cool. Cool. Where's my split hidden? Where is it? There we go. So now we're gonna move this. Again, it's all that fun stuff of, you know, as you're just working on stuff, finding cool ideas and finding things that could be interesting. I'm going to go ahead and take this now to, I'm going to put a bend curve on it, because I can stretch this out. Right? It's fun. Is there a keyboard shortcut for filling a color to a subtool? No, well, there probably is. But what I'm doing actually is I just have, you know, you have your MRGBs up here. So this will apply the material you have selected along with color. This will apply just color. This will apply just material. And then I, with my custom tool set, have the color thing here, and then I just have fill object already here. So I just constantly am changing color and filling the object, so it's really fast for me. And then if I want to color pick colors already on my character, then I can just hit C. Hitting C will like color select. You can see my color changing as I'm moving and navigating around my cursor. So that's another really easy way to color select and pick your stuff. Like this got, I don't know, kind of shrunk or weird. Yeah, I can make a micro adjustments like this all day long. And that's this is kind of the fun part, right? This is where like the character kind of starts to come to life, and then you can start texturing or like adding even extra cool little details if you wanted to. Something that I thought would be kind of fun, but would take a while for me personally, is to paint him, is actually start adding paint. Like this is kind of what they actually do in Arcane, since we brought it up, was if you take like a paintbrush, start actually figuring out what camera angle I would show this from, and start actually painting what would be considered like light from the, you know, explosion. So if you paint like a little bit of like a rim right or something like that, to make it feel like his, you know, his butt's getting lit up from the explosion, and then you paint your whole scene like that, then you're actually not rendering light, you just painted light onto your character. So I always thought that would be kind of fun to do. It's just very time consuming, but I think that'd be kind of cool. What is happening here? What is this? What are you? Oh, you're just extra. Get out of here. I don't need you. Fixing his anatomy, just combining all of it back over together again. Very easy. Again, my methods may seem crazy at first, but I swear they have purpose. But yeah. Here we go. I think, because it's now getting close to 6. I would say that for now, I mean, there's always tons of adjustments and stuff to be made. We'll do full screen, make it all look cool and stuff. Boom. Wow. Yeah, I think there you have it. There's our little fox alchemist character. So again, coming from, I can bring back up our reference. There's some stuff that we didn't add. There's some stuff that we added a lot to him. You know, I didn't end up adding like a shoulder pad vial thing, just holding potions and stuff. But again, from our first stream, you know, we came up with some genres. We came up with some ideas of who this character is and like where he kind of belongs. And we did this drawing. And he's come a long way, right, from a drawing like this, which I think is really cool. Because again, I went on and did some character expressions, trying to find more of the character, and went on and did this drawing for you guys, which is kind of where we based off of all of the stuff that you now see, but finding cool inspiration from alchemy symbols. I could go in and start texturing stuff maybe with some runes, just to add some more cool detail. And again, we're inspired by this for his little cool travel pack and pouches and things. So you can kind of see how, you know, we end up from one to the other. And I think it's actually come to like a pretty cool place. It's super fun. So again, I always implore everybody who's watching and stuff to do stuff like this, sort of follow along or do your own versions of stuff. And there's plenty more to do on this guy, but I would say for, you know, the month of Archetype the Trickster or the Joker character, I think we've got something pretty cool that we can keep working on. So, you know, maybe I'll do a render of him later on and whatnot, but for now I'll say I'm signing off, and this is Archetype, sponsored by Lenovo. Thank you guys for joining. Again, remember, there will be no streaming next week, but the following week, so you guys enjoy your holidays and have fun, eat lots of food, open presents, do whatever it is that you guys do to celebrate. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys next time. Bye.